I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
I'm torn. On the one hand, I personally love the lockdown lifestyle, but I felt more entrepreneurial than I have in the past 12, 13 years. And one thing I'm doing is, for the first time, I'm buying a mobile app on one of the sites that I've described in previous Instagram Lives. So I describe in this upcoming Q&A that you're about to listen to, I describe what kind of due diligence I did, what sorts of things I was looking for. I'm very excited about this. I'm kind of closing the deal right now. So once I close the deal, I'll describe more specifically what the app is and what my big dream for it is. Meanwhile, also I talk about a business idea for weddings, because all weddings are obviously changing in what I'm calling the Great Reset. I talk about the backstory of 50 Shades of Grey and how anyone else can maybe achieve a 50 Shades of Grey. I talk about the 1% rule. I talk about if you're moving from a blue state to a red state and you're worried you won't make friends, how to deal with that, and many more things. So hope you enjoy this upcoming podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topics, you can text me at 203-590-8607. Also, Robin's very excited to join these podcasts with me. If you have any feedback for her or anything, let us know. Thanks so much. Welcome to today's Q&A. Robin, how's it going? We're in brand new chairs, by the way. What kind of chairs are these?
I have no idea, but I feel like we can't be so close.
Can't be so close to me?
I don't know.
But you're compelled, or you don't want to be? I smell.
Maybe no.
I took a shower. Took my first shower of the week.
Yeah.
So hello everybody. Feel free to ask questions at any point. You can ask them here, but I might not see them. You could also text me at 203-590-8607, and I will see those. I want to talk about how to start up an online newsletter. What I've already discussed this before, but what maybe best practices are for such a thing. And but I also want to just remind everybody that right now things feel weird, right? Because we sort of have this urge that we want things to go back to normal. And then they told us, oh, well, it's not going to go back to normal. It's a new normal. And then they say, well, it's going to be like a new normal, but 50% of businesses will be out of business. But what I want to remind everybody is that there's not going to be a new normal. First off, normal wasn't so good to begin with. I mean, here's what happened in the normal world. 100 million people worked corporate jobs, and 1 out of 3 of them were laid off within a month of the lockdown. Like, you can argue, and I'll argue this, the American economy was doing the best it had ever done in February of 2021. That was the best month ever for the American economy. But is it really that great if 1 out of 3 Americans, within a few weeks, a few days of the government shutting down the economy, 1 out of 3 Americans were laid off? I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because were companies that insecure, had that little cash that they just had to fire everybody immediately? And the answer is yes. I mean, the average restaurant only had 16 days of cash in the bank. Right now, Yelp is saying approximately 40 or 50% of their clients, their restaurants and other stores are already out of business.
So we were fragile.
Yeah, the economy was fragile, and that's a really good point. And I think I've done this before, but let's go over Nassim Taleb for a second. So Nassim Taleb, I don't know, you could have different opinions about him. I don't care. And you could have even different opinions about his books. His books are all over the place. He actually recently published another book. But I want to go over the titles of his books, because if all you know is the titles of Nassim Taleb's books, then you don't have to read them, because his books are about the economy and making decisions on investing and stuff. Forget about all that. But I'm interested in, how do I make decisions for myself? So right now, I see on Twitter all the time, and on Facebook too, everyone's arguing. I'll give you an example. 2 days ago on Facebook, a new private face group started, which was, I forget the name of it, but it was for people who are thinking of or about to move out of New York City. And so this has been a big debate in New York City, which is, just on Monday, there were 11 killings and shootings, whatever. Yeah. There's never used to be killings in New York City. New York City was safe, and nobody seems to care. And it's not in the news. Like, if you go to CNN, it won't be on the news. I don't know why.
There was a shooting just right down the street from our apartment yesterday.
Oh, good to hear. There was a shooting right down the street from our apartment. What, do you know the block?
Well, it wasn't right down, but it was 109th Street, I think, and Columbus.
All right, so basically right next door to Columbia University, where Molly's heading in a few weeks. So there was a shooting. Good to hear. So for these reasons, all the first tier cities everybody's thinking of moving. The business opportunities are gone because now we're all able to work remote. The restaurants are closed down or out of business. So usually in the big cities, you get the best food, like New York City, San Francisco, LA, you get the best food. No more. Cultural stuff, like the Broadway's closed. Yeah. Lincoln Center's closed in New York City for shows or opera or jazz. Comedy clubs are closed. Bars are closed.
Arts.
And Miami, we came down, we figured, let's escape this shithole. It's all the rioting, whatever. Mm-hmm. So we came down to Miami. Now Miami's closed. Miami was open. We come down here and they're like, oh no, Robin and James are here. We better close down. I was supposed to do comedy either last night or tonight at the Hard Rock Cafe in Miami. Yeah. Closed. Rescheduled for August 12th, but closed right now. We'll see what happens in August. I'm also booked, I forgot to tell you, I'm booked on August 29th somewhere, but I forget where.
All right. Well, I'll be available somewhere.
Hopefully you'll be able to make it, Robin. Yeah. But here's what's interesting though. So this Facebook started 2 days ago, and it was for people thinking of moving to New York, and they were comparing notes about where to move, the prices, where to move, or real estate going down. And then somebody made an interesting comment which bothered me. And the political direction of her comment didn't bother me. The fact that this was a group to help people make a very important decision in their lives. She said, I'm really worried about moving to XYZ location. Will there be too many red people there? Meaning Republicans. And she said, I'm blue. She's a Democrat, and New York City's blue. And will there be too many red people there? And and everybody commented immediately, no political discussions in here, which I agree with, because this is about people making, and when you're talking about blue, are you talking about Biden? Are you talking about Cuomo? Are you talking about de Blasio? Because New York City, de Blasio, Cuomo, and Biden don't necessarily agree with each other, so I don't even know what blue means. It's not like there's a blue team and a red team.
Right.
Cuomo was so upset at de Blasio, he almost tried to figure out how he could kick de Blasio out. And Trump was upset at Cuomo, but then he wasn't. And then Cuomo was upset at Trump, and then he wasn't. Who knows? But if I was to respond to this person, I would have said, listen, you were in New York City the entire time. Whatever's happening in New York City, everybody in New York City is a little bit responsible for it. Like there's nobody else responsible for it but people who live in New York City. It's not like people came from Alabama to New York City, trashed New York City, and then went back to Alabama. Like it was all the problems you're having with New York City is because of people living in New York City, regardless of what political affiliation. And so you got to take a little bit of responsibility for yourself. And so
plus I think it's crazy because why do you want to surround yourself with somebody that's exactly like you? How do you grow that way? I mean, like, how can you base your next home or location on their political, beliefs? I would never do that.
Yeah, like for instance,
I have friends that are Democrats. I have friends that are Republicans. I have friends that are independent. I mean, so what? I think it's great to have a whole different perspective, but you have to be open to listening.
Right. I think it's important. But I get it though. Here's what's happened is that we've gotten so enmeshed and polarized in this team behavior. Are you on the blue team or the red team? If you're on the red team, I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
If you're on the blue team and I'm on the red team, I can't talk to you. But like, look at us, for instance. So we're big fans of Eric Adams, the Brooklyn Borough president, Democrat, extreme Democrat. He's running for mayor of New York City. I was fans of Andrew Yang, and
I like Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew Yang's great. And, but also I like lower taxes. The Biden tax plan has much higher taxes. By the way, just a little comment on taxes. Taxes do not solve budget deficit problems. When the government collects money, it doesn't immediately go into a bank account. The money actually disappears. The government does two things with money. The government prints money through the Federal Reserve or the Treasury Department, and the government destroys money. So it's not like when money comes into the government, it doesn't immediately go out and say, okay, well, now we're going to pay these people. The government only pays people when it either one of their divisions generates, like they sell an asset and then they give money to people directly, or they borrow money from the Federal Reserve. And then sometimes the money coming in goes to pay for the money they borrowed. But raising taxes doesn't immediately get spent. That's not how you save an economy. But that's another issue. But, that gets into monetary theory, whatever. Not interesting. But, de Blasio, he would go on TV and say things like, okay, no large gatherings. You can't have schools open. And he would specifically say, except if you're protesting, which doesn't really make sense. Like people, and either gatherings cause coronavirus or they don't. And look, this is a serious virus. Maybe they should have enforced no protest. But at the same time, New York City's had no new deaths recently. Power to New York City. So maybe the virus has died there, in which case allow large gatherings. Allow people need to feed their families. There was an economist, I think his name's Donald Henderson, died recently, wrote a great paper saying the best way to respond to a pandemic is to allow people to keep making money. They'll make their own decisions. Before the pandemic, before the lockdowns happened, which was on March 16th in New York City, people were not going to restaurants. They had already decided for themselves to social distance. Stand Up New York, the Comedy Club, was empty. We had to shut down early. Subways were empty. We wouldn't let our kids on the subway. Like people were wearing masks. I would wear a mask to Zabar's before the lockdown. So people are capable of making decisions. They don't need a fatherly government figure. And I'm not even being libertarian. I'm not a libertarian either. But they don't need a fatherly government figure to tell them what's right and wrong. And in fact, we realize now that the government was lying to us much of the time. All the different parts. Well, the WHO, the CDC, Trump, Cuomo, de Blasio, they all had different agendas.
That's right.
And I'm not saying they were bad for lying. Like, for instance, people would say, I won't say who, people in the government would say masks aren't so important. This was in March. They said it with good intentions because they thought there was going to be a short supply of masks, and they wanted those masks reserved for doctors. And so I get it. But they lied, and we trusted them. And then they, you
Once
have
you
to
get that, you don't trust the person again, or you
Yeah,
start
or-
to think that they're not telling you the truth about other things.
or you get depressed. And I think that's what was happening. I think what's happening now is we're seeing a lot of anxiety. Anxiety has led to things like the autonomous zone in Seattle, which is no longer. But the good news is, here's the good news. I just looked again at the data. I wish I could show you the chart. The chart's right in front of me. Go to World of Meters and look at daily new deaths in the U.S. Obviously, it peaked around April 20th, which is what we said even in early March would happen. I said April 15th, so I was wrong by 5 days. And it's been the daily new deaths has been trending down ever since. So that's the good news on the virus. It still exists. It still exists. I have a cousin who's now been on a ventilator for 2 weeks. And it's sad. He came down with pneumonia while on the ventilator. They realized he was has diabetes while he was in the coma on the ventilator. So, knocking on wood, he's okay. This virus is serious, but the trend is down. You can't argue about the data. The trend is down on the number of new deaths. Yes, some states are getting the curve at different times than other states. And so you have to be careful, like in Miami right now. And then you have to go on with your life and do things. So you can't say, oh no, I can't live in New York City anymore, but I'm so fragile. I can't be around people who believe in different things.
Yeah.
Like when you have to look back through history, 1789, or 1787, the Constitution was being written. Who was it being written by? James Madison, James Monroe, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. It's a good thing I saw the play Hamilton before they canceled it, but before cancel culture canceled it. But the important thing is that these people did not disagree. They did not agree with each other. James Madison hated Alexander Hamilton. Thomas Jefferson hated John Adams. They did not agree at all on just about anything. That's why James Madison and Alexander Hamilton and James Monroe teamed up to write the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers so they could have discourse. So what does being a liberal mean? Political liberalism means you have many different voices and you have a democratic system that can handle many different voices that come together and discuss and come up with solutions. And by the way, some of those voices will be insane and you shouldn't trust them. But that's a small fringe. You can't give all of your political power to the fringe. So 15 years ago or 20 years ago, there was too much political power maybe in the fringe, alt-right, super, evangelical. I'm not saying evangelicals are no good, but there was like a fringe alt-right religious community that was maybe having too much power. And that was, influencing the Newt Gingriches of the world and some political factions in the Republican Party. And now we have I'm liberal, I'm Democrat on every single social issue. There's maybe too much when you start seeing everybody cancel. Like yesterday, Barry Weiss, who was a reporter and editor at the New York Times, resigned. Now, Barry Weiss is a friend of mine from way back. She used to be my editor at the Wall Street Journal, and then she became a top columnist at the New York Times, very famous, well-known columnist at the New York Times. She quit the New York Times because she said, and I believe her, she said she was being bullied because people thought she was too conservative, which she definitely was not. She said she was being bullied because she wrote a book about anti-Semitism, and someone said to her, oh, you're going to write another article? Is it about the Jews again? And
Really?
So what?
Man.
And another person, Andrew Sullivan, resigned from, I guess, the New Republic. And he's been there for a billion years. As long as I've been reading the New Republic, he's been there. So it's starting to get to be too much where the voices that were important for us to learn from and to listen to are disappearing.
Yeah, and that had an open mind, really.
Yeah, and if you have an open mind, you go on Twitter. Twitter says, oh, you have an open mind. Here, I have something for you. Here's a glass of poison. And then that open mind, you take the poison, the open mind degenerates into the worst, most angry.
Yeah.
It's like this woman on Twitter, oh, I can't move to a state where people disagree with me. You have to be able to love and friendship and community and even a democracy have to rise above
any political,
one voice or another. You have to have
humanity,
a pluralism of voices all talking and discussing. And, America prides itself on being the most democratic country. But once you start to call Deborah Messing, if you know who Deborah Messing is, an actress, once you start to call Deborah Messing a racist because she was against Kanye West running, you're making a mistake. Now, by the way, they didn't call her a racist because Kanye West was black. They called her a racist because she implied that Kanye West would steal votes away from Joe Biden. So she was had a liberal or a Democrat cause, and they still called her racist. So it got topsy-turvy. Or there was another article, and by the way, I'm going to repeat a Ben Shapiro comment. So if you have a problem with Ben Shapiro, I'm sorry. But some group, some newsletter said they were outraged because there was a law or a discussion about cervical cancer that did not include transgender women. And they said, if you're going to make this budget for cervical cancer, you have to include transgender women. And Ben Shapiro had to point out people who convert to being a woman from being a man do not have a cervix. Like, they're not going to get cervical cancer. They're not, so I don't know. Do you have then separate right? And this was J.K. Rowling's point, is that women have been fighting for equal rights for hundreds of years. And yes, I will agree, there are many different genders. There's cisgender men, cisgender women, there's trans men, trans women, but biological women, this is J.K. Rowling's point, should not be at the bottom of the totem pole again when asking for rights. That's all she said. And now literally people are burning children's books about a boy wizard who happens to look like me a little bit. So I'm against the burning of Harry Potter books, and our daughter loves Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. We have several daughters who love Harry Potter. Anyway, I'm going to answer some questions now.
It's just a crazy world.
It is a crazy world, but that's okay. That's okay.
It is okay.
Because here's what you have to do. You have to say to yourself, that's a crazy world, but I'm not going to get angry about it.
No.
I'm not going to go crazy. I'm just going to...
We're happy. I mean, we're happy with ourselves. It seems like the people that are really bitter are not happy with themselves for some reason.
I think that's a good point. I think they're trying to outsource their happiness to being, I'm in the blue team and the blue team's going to win, or I'm in the red team and the red team's in power. Yeah. So I'm outsourcing my happiness to what team I'm on. It's the same reason people might wear shirts with like a Nike logo. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But sometimes you outsource a little bit of your self-esteem to what logos you're wearing. Yeah. This is why, like in the 80s, like sometimes you'd see kids would kill people for like their Adidas shoes or whatever.
Because that's their identity.
I would kill people right now for Yeezy shoes. I want my Yeezy sneakers, which is the Kanye West.
Oh, really?
Yeezy. You gotta be up with the times, Robin. So, and again, the more people ask me all the time, how do I get productive? Well, and I'll answer a question. Part of it is I don't really go on. I've stopped going on the homepage of social media. In the beginning of all these IG lives, I was, because I wanted to see how people were misinterpreting the data. But now I've stopped. I just focus on looking at the sources that I care about and figuring out whether the pessimism is warranted or the optimism is warranted. Here's where I'm pessimistic. Things are going to change. Some millions of jobs are not going to come back. My personal back of the napkin estimate is that 14 million jobs that existed before the pandemic will not come back, which is why
be added more different types of jobs. I think will be
maybe, but it won't replace the 14 million. There will be for years. There's going to be. Right now we're at about 12% unemployment. The lowest we're going to get in the near future is, and this is just my guess, but it's my prediction based on 20 years of looking at this. The lowest we're going to get, we're not going to get back to 3% unemployment, which is where we were in February. The lowest we're going to get between now and early next year, at least, if not more, is 9% unemployment, which is about 14 million jobs. But, and you're right, there's going to be some jobs like contact tracers. Amazon's going to replace people. I'm going to hire people. Walmart will, whatever. But there are opportunities, which is why I love talking about these ideas for businesses. Right. Someone just asked me, my wife And again, you could ask me at 203-590-8607. This is where I saw that question. Someone texted me and said, my wife she sells wedding flower arrangements. How can she pivot in her business? Because there's no more weddings and there's no more external weddings. People aren't like renting a hall, and you can't even rent a hall in the future because you don't know if there's going to be a shutdown. Sure. Like, you don't. Oh, we just got a call from Boca Raton from some spam call. But we don't know if like a year from now, maybe New York's going to be shut down. You don't know if you could rent the planetarium to have your wedding.
There's going to be more outdoor.
There might be outdoor weddings, but in New York City or some city.
In your home.
Yeah, there might be. But remember, large gatherings are not allowed. So you're not even allowed to have a gathering of more than 6 people in Miami right now in your home or somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. So here's what I would suggest to this person is, I always suggest as a basic, make sure you're writing down 10 ideas a day, because you're ultimately, and I'm speaking to the woman who does the wedding flowers, you're ultimately the expert at what you do. Start writing 10 ideas a day so you start exercising that creativity muscle. But beyond that, and I've briefly talked about this before, I do think there's going to be an opportunity, just like there are wedding planners, there's going to be an opportunity for virtual wedding planners. So let's say I was going to help somebody who was having a virtual wedding and they were in Kentucky. So first I would check the laws in Kentucky. Do you need to have a minister in the same physical space as you? If not, if yes, then we'll arrange that. If not, then we'll figure out how to do it via Zoom and make sure all the technology works and so on. Now, how many people do you want to invite to your wedding? Let's make the list. Let's invite them all via Zoom. Should we send kind of a gift or some game-like things that we could do during the wedding? Like I'll plan like games that everyone could do on Zoom. Like let's do a trivia contest about the couple and we'll have prizes and awards. Mm-hmm. Let's have the wedding registry on Zoom. Let's auction off things on Zoom because the wedding won't be as expensive. So the couple could plan, a few more extra frills. Let's make sure the bride has a snapshot in a breakout room with every single guest. Let's make sure the couples with every single family member. So we'll act like a Zoom photographer. Let's make a really nice Zoom or virtual wedding album that can be displayed on a special Instagram page and also physically printed up and sent to the couple. Let's maybe send everybody a bottle of wine that's branded with the couple. So they have a drink, and let's maybe deliver meals, make sure meals are delivered to every person who's attending the wedding. So think of all the things you would want to do or have at a virtual wedding, and you could still plan. In fact, I would go to a virtual wedding. I would not go to a real wedding. I didn't even go to real weddings before the pandemic. I am certainly not going to real weddings ever again in my life. But I would go to a virtual wedding where, there's my friend from high school getting married. It's so nice. And then maybe someone delivers the meal that they pay for, and someone delivers a bottle of wine so we could drink. And then everybody's having like a trivia contest about the couple and, the college, and then everybody's taking Zoom photos. So I'm getting, hey, John from college, it's good to see you again in the breakout room, like blah, blah, blah. So that's one idea.
I have an idea. Sometimes at the wedding, the bride throws the bouquet to all the single women. Like the lady that has that business, the flower business, she can maybe do a package for like the single women that are invited, and maybe that could be sent to their home. That
is an awesome idea. Maybe, and instead of throwing it, maybe there's some kind of trivia quiz or game to catch the virtual bouquet.
And then it could be sent in the mail or something.
Yeah, or maybe even play some mobile game that's hooked up to the wedding where a bouquet is thrown and people virtually try to catch it. So there's always ideas. And then, by the way, then you could kind of you could then do a newsletter or an online course, how to do a virtual wedding, and you could sell that course. And then you could hire other people to help do virtual wedding planning for you, or you can outsource some of the stuff to India, like getting the branded wine and getting it delivered to all the right places. So
or you could start that yourself.
Yeah, so you could.
That's a really good idea.
So you could build, start a whole wines for weddings business,
right?
Or wines for events business, like bar mitzvahs, weddings, whatever. So always think of the ways to scale. Like, so weddings are at the core is, remember the spoken wheel approach, weddings at the core. So let's do a virtual wedding planner. Let's do podcasts about virtual weddings and weddings in general. Let's do, an online course about how I set up virtual weddings and the checklist you would need for virtual weddings for anyone else who wants to do this. Let's do a deal with wedding registries, and then I get an affiliate fee if I'm a virtual wedding planner and I'm hooking the couple up to a registry. Maybe I get an affiliate deal, so that's another source of income. Let's write a book on virtual events, conferences, weddings, court cases. We have a friend who's a lawyer. He's constantly logging into Zoom now for court cases. So maybe there's issues there. It'd be interesting, do a podcast about virtual events. So all I'm saying is, it's easy to get trapped. Like, well, I love flower arrangements. I love floristry. I only want to do that. I'm sorry. Nobody is buying flowers for a real wedding anymore. And there's nothing you could do. But if you like the wedding space, here's some opportunities. If you like the flower space, maybe there's other opportunities, outdoors or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, that was one question, but it's also trying to describe a way of thinking. There's nothing we can do about this. We can't regret what the government did. We can't regret what the virus did. We can't regret if this politician was good or like Cuomo was good or bad, Trump's good or bad. It has nothing to do with me feeding my family by working and making a living. I have to now take what I did and maybe I'll create an even bigger business. Well, how could it be bigger if the economy is shrinking? Don't forget, they just airdropped $2 trillion on the economy. And trust me, they're going to airdrop more money on the economy. That money has not gone into the economy yet. There's $2 trillion out there waiting for you, me, you to go in and start a new kind of business that's never been started before, to take those trillions of dollars. And it's not a bad thing, a good thing, a crazy thing, an evil thing. It's just what we have to do now to be healthy and so on.
Survival.
Yeah.
Survival.
Another thing it's important is how much, like previously, if you worked at a job, there's this whole notion of keeping up with the Joneses. Like, oh, I'm a middle manager at Procter & Gamble. My neighbor is a middle manager at Exxon. I got to make sure I have the same kind of house as him. Here in this time, which we're calling the Great Reset, you don't have to keep up with the Joneses anymore. Guess what? The Joneses have died. Sadly, the Joneses are dead now. The entire period that lasted from, let's call it 1910 to 2020, the Joneses were always your neighbors for 110 years. They're dead. They have gone. And now is an opportunity for you to say, you know what? I don't really like this house. I don't really like living in Akron, Ohio. I think maybe I'm going to move to New Orleans or a suburb of New Orleans, or I'm going to move to Barbados, or I'm going to move to New Zealand or Hawaii, like where all the real estate's down right now. Like all the real estate's crushed all over the country. I can live wherever I want now and do my virtual wedding planning business. Right. And you know what? I don't need a 5-bedroom house. My kids are gone now, and space wasn't as important as it used to be. My husband and I could live in a 1-bedroom, a 2-bed, 1-bedroom in an office, or maybe we'll live in one of those tiny houses and we'll buy a plot of land in Alabama, live in a tiny house. Mm-hmm. And, I always wanted I wanted to learn how to play the piano. Maybe I don't want to work as many hours, so I don't need to make as much money, because now I'm going to focus on learning how to play the piano. I'm taking, at lessonface.com, I'm taking a beatboxing class. Not quite ready to show off my mad beatboxing skills yet, but, I sacrificed figuring out how to make more money so I could learn beatboxing. But did I sacrifice? Because when you make money, what can you do with it? You can either invest in things that will make more money, or you could invest in luxuries that, I got a nice watch. Okay, great. Some people love watches, some people don't. Or you could invest in having experiences. I want to go, climb a volcano, or I want to go live in New Orleans and learn how to be a chef, Or I want to be a professional rapper. I'm 70 years old, but I think I could be a professional rapper. You only have so much time in your life to have some of these experiences. You're not going to be playing tennis every day when you're 80 years old and you finally retire. If you're 40, maybe I could barely play tennis every day, and I'm in my 50s. By the way, I don't play tennis every day. When I say barely, that's probably a lie. I probably can't do it every day. But you're going to run out of time for some of these experiences. Money, when you invest money to make more money, you get what's called a dividend. So if I buy Exxon stock, every year I'm going to get a 4% dividend. If I put $1,000 in Exxon stock, every year I'm going to get $40 back once a year. But if Robin and I move to New Orleans and I spend a week taking a cooking class, we take a cooking class together, I have infinite dividends. Every single day, I could think about how fondly that experience was, taking a cooking class in New Orleans with Robin. And maybe another dividend is I could cook and she could cook for me and I could cook for her. That's another dividend. Oh, and then the next day, I think I'm just going to enjoy remembering it again. Or the next day, I could think, I'm going to combine New Orleans cuisine with Israeli cuisine or Chinese cuisine. And I'm going to make, what's a good New Orleans dish?
Grits.
Yeah, I'm gonna make crawfish.
Etouffee.
I'm gonna make crawfish with soy sauce on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And buttered crawfish and put some soy sauce. I don't know. And so that pays another dividend. So experiences have many more dividends than money. We've been so focused in the news on how much money, how many people have lost their jobs, how much money has been lost, how much money things cost. Well, guess what? Harvard is going to take your $70,000 a year tuition, and you still have to take classes remote. You can't even go to the campus. Maybe your kids shouldn't. Maybe you could save money. Maybe your kids shouldn't spend $70,000 for a course. I mentioned yesterday how Google's offering certificate programs now for almost $0, and they'll hire people who get those certificates. So education is changing. Buying a house is changing. There's a site. I forgot what the site is. There is a site where you could rent. There's houses. It's almost like Airbnb, but not quite. You could rent for 2-month periods, fully furnished houses or not furnished, move into them in just 2 months. So the whole notion of ownership is going to change, and it's going to get cheaper. Sometimes you want to live in a nice house. Sometimes you're going to live in a smaller house because you just want to go, I want to go to Montana for the experience. I want to go to Louisiana for the experience. Maybe I'll rent a smaller house. Maybe when I'm in Kansas, I'll rent a bigger house. So you have to think about how you're converting money into either experiences or reducing anxiety or keeping up with the Joneses, and ask yourself, do I really need to still keep up with the Joneses? Who were the Joneses anyway? So on Wall Street, it's very common. People make $1 million a year, $2 million a year, but a lot of that is in bonus. And they feel like, oh no, I'm making $2 million a year. I got to buy the big house. I got to buy the fancy car. I got to do the big vacation. You don't have to do that anymore. Focus on what you really want to do and quit that stupid job that takes 100 hours a week until you're 60 years old. And then it's too late for you to go take a chef's class in New Orleans. It's too late for you to go to, basketball camp with Michael Jordan in Las Vegas or whatever. Anyway, that's my rant. Sorry. Okay, so this is just a comment. James, I used your ideas about writing business ideas down every day, but lately I've changed it to composing music. Every morning when I wake up, I record the first thing that comes to my head musically, and I have done this for about 18 months with fantastic results. Thank you so much. This has changed my life.
Wow.
I appreciate that. But you changed I just want to mention you changed your life. It's hard to write a piece and record. It takes discipline to record a piece of music every single day. But it's important to remember the 1% rule. If you compound something, and I'm talking about a skill, not money, if you compound money, if you compound anything 1% a day for a year, it doesn't just go up 365%. It goes up 3,780%. You get 37 times better. So $1 turns into $37.80, not $3.65. You might be thinking, huh? How does that make sense? It's 1% a day. It's 365 days. Isn't that 365%? No, because day 2, it's a little bigger. Now you're taking 1% of that. Day 3, it's a little bigger. It compounds. That's the power of compounding, which Albert Einstein called the 8th wonder of the world. Compounding. It's not linear. It goes up exponentially. So what you did, Tom, the person who asked me, who sent me this note, is that you improved at composing music 1% a day. So you got 37 times better. Whatever that means, we don't know. But you took an experience and compounded it and changed your life as a result. If all you did was put money in the bank, you don't change your life. You just have more money in the bank. If you compound a skill 1% a day, now 18 months later, you're a composer. You're a musical composer. We'd all love to hear your recordings now. You're good now. You're one of the best in the world. That's what 1% a day improvement does. If I want to improve at writing 1% a day, I know I'm going to be one of the best writers in the world within a year, 2 years. How about 30 years later that I've been trying to do that? So, I'm not saying I'm the best writer in the world, but close to it. All right. Somebody says, what businesses should I buy to thrive? So I had mentioned previously some business ideas you could have that you could. It's much easier to buy an existing business than to start a business. So if you start a business from scratch, you have to come up with the product, you have to come up with the idea, you have to make the product, and then you have to figure out how can I afford to make the product? And then you have to figure out how can I afford to market it and advertise it? But what if you were to buy an existing business? And I've described this in several podcasts. I won't go over the financial aspects again, but we are in the process right now of buying a small business. Specifically, I am buying a small app on for Apple and Google phones, for Apple phones and Android phones. I'm buying a small app that's a game. And I'm using one of the websites where you can buy and sell apps. And I'll just tell you I'll tell you roughly the financials. So it makes a certain amount of earnings per year. And so I had to do due diligence. I said, well, how did you do? I looked at all the financials and I asked myself, how did this person do during the lockdown? How does this person do in the summer? How does this person do during a recession? How does this person do when there's a bull market? How does he do in the winter? Because maybe in the summer, people aren't playing apps as much because they're outdoors. Who knows? I had to see, where is the audience? Is it South America? Is it Europe? Is it America? Well, it's important because American advertisers pay more. But maybe if most of the audience was in South America, maybe I could figure out, maybe that means there's room for growth. And I have to decide, how will I advertise this so that it grows? And, I haven't done this yet. I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm going to do due diligence on the software, on the code. I will go through the code line by line and make sure if something needs to be changed, I can change it, or someone I can hire can change it, and I know how to explain the problem to them. I had to negotiate a little bit. The game was made just for Apple. It wasn't made for Google. So I offered a little bit more money in the price, and he's going to make the app for the Android. So more due diligence. I did a background check on the person who owned the app and on his business. He was in another country, so it's a little harder to do due diligence on him. I had to basically go through all these questions, but the important thing was I wanted to make sure I was paying no more than 3 to 3.5 times earnings. So I'm going to make up numbers. Let's say this game on the iPhone made $10,000 a year. Making up numbers, that's not what it makes. I don't want to pay more than $35,000 to own this game. And there's a reason for that. When you put money in a savings account, you get every year, they'll give you, if I put $100 in a savings account, every year I'm going to get 0.65%. That's the interest on a savings account right now. I'm going to get 65 cents for every $100 I put in a savings account. But I know if I pay 3 times earnings for a game that generates 10,000 in profit a year with little or no work from me, then that means it's as if I put $30,000 into a savings account, and instead of getting a tiny amount, I'm getting $10,000 every year instead of, 1/40th of that. So whatever 1/40th, I'm getting, instead of getting, I don't know, $1,000 a year, I'm getting, instead of getting $80 a year, I'm getting 10,000 a year as like almost as an interest bearing account in a savings account. But there's more important. Because I negotiated to get the Google app finished, I could maybe double my earnings right away. So that was one factor. Because right now this app sells 1 ad per game played, maybe I'll sell 2. So I could double earnings immediately. So there's various opportunities to double earnings. We talked about this. Maybe there's ways to change the app a little bit so I can private label the app for other people. So once I finish buying the app, I'll explain what that means, and I'll show you specifically. And then so there's various ways I can improve the earnings. But even more importantly, there's a meta business model. Every business model, you should have a meta business model. So if I buy 100 of these apps, then I'm gonna buy them all for 3 times earnings, but it's just the nature of business. And I didn't learn this until I was 15 to 20 years an entrepreneur. But I'm telling you now, the smaller a company is, the smaller you can sell it for as a multiple of earnings. So if something makes 10,000 a year, you'd only buy it for $30,000. But if something makes 10 million a year, it's not going to sell for 3 times earnings. It could sell for as much as 10 times earnings. So if I buy a whole bunch of these apps and combine them together, and even if I don't improve the earnings at all, I'm buying them all at 3 times earnings, I'm selling them at 10 times earnings, so I'm making 330% on my money. I'm making a huge profit just by combining them without doing any additional work. So there's 2 business models. One is improve the way I'm making money per app, and the other is just buy a lot of them and then sell them once I combine them, because I'll get a higher multiple on earnings. So I'm going through the process of buying my first app, and the real critical thing is, what is the multiple on earnings? Because if it's small, don't pay more than 3 or 4 times earnings. Try to pay 2 times earnings. The other thing to do is, someone says hypothetical app. I am actually going through the process of buying this app. Believe me, I'm nervous about it because of the software component. I've never programmed a mobile app, and it's been a while since I've done any programming. But don't pay more than 3 or 4 times earnings. And by the way, buy something you love. So I've been able to play this app, this game, and I got addicted to it. She saw I wouldn't go to sleep at night because I was trying to, they keep track of all those high scores around the world. I was trying to be the best in the world all of a sudden. I get very competitive. And I was so happy with my high score, not from last night, but from this morning. I was so happy for my high score. I even texted the guy in his little island my high score, and I've beaten his high score. So I'm happy about that. But so that makes me want to buy the app even more. And then the more I play it, the more ideas I have for improving it. And I think, why didn't he think of this? And this is, the hard level is not really that hard. Like, maybe we can make it even more difficult, and that's in the code. So again, if you're thinking about buying a business, just focus on what are the earnings and what's the multiple I'm paying over earnings, and make sure you do thorough due diligence. So no matter what's happening in the economy, no matter what's happening in anything, the earnings are going to stay the same or grow. So that's why what happened in the pandemic, what happened, and if the earnings shot up in the pandemic, I cut them in half in my mind, and I only want to pay 3 times that, my mental image of the earnings, because maybe the pandemic is just a one-time thing, and if it shot up, I'm discounting it. So I'm looking at the average earnings. Also, I like the longevity of this business. This business has been around 9 years. It's been downloaded 1.5 million times. It has a rating of 4.5 stars on about 7,000 about 2,000 reviews on the iTunes store. So 4.5 stars with 2,000 reviews is great. So I know the business has been a long time, and I was able to see the financials 9 years back, and I saw steady growth. And then I looked at the growth last month during the lockdown. But anyway, that's how you decide, pay 3 times earnings, make sure the earnings are real, do what you love, see how you would improve the business that you're buying, and then buy lots of businesses so when you sell it for a higher multiple of earnings. Let's even go more meta. You could do an online newsletter or, like I said before, an online course or a podcast about every business you buy and do the step-by-step guide. So there's lots of ways, and that helps you build awareness for, I want more people to download this app once I buy it.
Right. It's sort of like what I do with cooking when I cook well. But, you buy something already made, like a spaghetti sauce or a salsa, but then you take what was already made and then you add more ingredients to make it better. So that's sort of what you're saying. It's like you can make something instead of going from scratch. It's just easy to take something that you like and then you can actually make it better.
Right. Because this person who I'm buying this from, he was in his lane. Like, he made a basic version of this game, and it's a very common type of game, but he made a basic version of it and he stayed in his lane. Whereas we're coming in and we can maybe throw other ingredients in because we're excited. Whereas he's making other games. He wants to use the money. You always have to ask why would you sell this business? Yeah. But he wants to use the money. He's making another game that's much bigger. So he's more excited about something else. He's not going to work on adding these features. So asking someone why they want to sell and having ideas for how you can improve it, that you're right. It is like, it's like taking your mom's recipe and she never changed it, but now you're younger and you just came back from Cajun class in New Orleans. You could throw in some Cajun recipes. Right. So, let's see. Another question. I forgot where I stored the questions. Okay. Oh, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Oh, this was an interesting question, which was a little weird. So I have a weird answer. Someone wrote me and said, I'm a cucumber on Tesseract. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. I want to create a platform for a business. Who can help? Here's an idea. First off, so this is someone asking on Instagram. I want to create a platform for a business. Who can help? So I'm not sure what you mean by platform, but I'll assume you need some software written. So you can go to freelancer.com and you spec out in full detail what the requirements of your platform are. Be as detailed as possible. Draw sketches if you need to. Describe what every page, whether it's a mobile app or a website, describe what every page looks like. Describe the functionality you want for people who don't have accounts, people who do have accounts, people who are searching, people who are messaging, whatever. Describe everything, put it on freelancer.com, and people from around the world, programmers from around the world, it's called the reverse auction. They will bid lower and lower to do your job. And then you have a chance to do due diligence. You can even ask someone for like $100, I think it costs. You can even ask someone at freelancer.com to help you do due diligence on these programmers. And you can pick a programmer that way. You could pick a programmer through Fiverr, Fiverr.com. There's lots of ways you could find a programmer. If you have some software skills also, you can go to something called codementor.com and they can give you answers. We were thinking a few months ago of making a quiz app. Well, it turns out you don't need to know how to do software at all to make a quiz app for the iPhone. There's a website out there that will generate quiz games for you and upload it straight to the iPhone store. And you need an Apple developer account, but that's it. So maybe it's the case that your platform could be built with very little software. So there's various ways. You could find one of these. It's called no-code websites, or you could, if you're doing a little bit of coding, you could go to codementor.com and get advice from them. They charge like $15 an hour. Or you can go to freelancer.com and outsource it. Or if you know somebody, but the first thing I would do is really spec out what you want, what every page, what every screen looks like, and spec it out for people who have accounts, spec it out for people who don't have accounts, spec out all the functions and features. Just make sure you can draw it so that way you can explain it easily to someone else. So now the question someone just asked me was, and this is weird, like this person And I appreciate it. This person writes short romance stories. So he loves the romance genre. He writes short stories that are romance. He thinks they'll be very appealing, and he wants to write a 4-page subscription letter for romance stories. I don't think I would pay a subscription to see romance stories.
Yeah.
Would you?
No.
Are there any kind of fiction stories that you would pay a subscription newsletter for?
No. Maybe if it's more investigative.
Yeah, you like that.
I like that.
Yeah, but then I would want to do it like in true crime or something like that, like real cases.
I don't know, like taking a subject that's happening, like Epstein or whatever.
But this
and digging
fiction,
into,
though.
Right, but I mean, I wouldn't do that. I would
Yeah.
go more towards...
But here's what I would recommend. So I appreciate what this person wants to do. They need to make money, but they love writing romance stories. Here's what I would do. Go to fanfiction.net or Wattpad. So Wattpad is WATTPAD.com. And these are sites where you can write short stories. So Wattpad has millions of people reading short stories on Wattpad. It's mostly for kids. But fanfiction.net has millions of people also. You could pick any TV show like Gossip Girl or Friends or Seinfeld or Harry Potter or whatever, and you could write fan fiction, and you'll get followers. People who every time you write a story, you'll get more. If the stories are good, this is how you validate this idea. If your stories are good, then over time you will build up a fan base and a fan following. Remember, money, experiences, and skills are more important than money. So right now, we got to get you the experience of getting on a disciplined habit of writing these romance stories and putting them out there for the public to see. And then we validate the idea. We have the experience of validating the idea. Post on fanfiction.net, post on Wattpad, even post on Facebook. Get fans and followers. E.L. James, you know who she is. She wrote 50 Shades of Grey. Guess what? She started out on fanfiction.net writing fan fiction for the movie Twilight. So she was writing all this vampire fan fiction, and someone said, boy, you should make a book out of this. She got 1.8 million followers on fanfiction.net, just writing all this erotica based on the Twilight movie series. And then she figured, you know what? I'm going to write a novel about this, but I can't use the Twilight characters. So she just switched the vampires to billionaires, and she posted her stories, which was 50 Shades of Grey. And she's a billionaire now. There's like 5 books later, there's movies later, but she started out on a fan fiction website. She got up to 1.8 million followers. Then when she had all these followers, she published a version, not the same thing, but she changed it to soft porn erotica. She published it on Amazon, and her 1.8 million followers bought the book right away because they loved her. And boom, off to the races. Like it's not a well-written book. I've read it. I wanted to see what is so great. And it follows the formula of a romance, of soft porn or whatever. And it's fine for that. And it coincided with the development of the Kindle, so people could read on the subway without seeing, no one knows what you're reading. Oh, I'm reading Nietzsche. Yeah. Don't look at what I'm reading. It's in my Kindle. And, so she published this. And by the way, she asked Amazon, she sold her first 250,000 copies, self-published on Amazon. She asked Amazon if they could publish it through one of their publishing companies. They actually rejected her. They didn't like the book, even though she had sold so much. And then I think it was Random House or Simon & Schuster. And the month she published, 1 out of 3 books bought in the entire world. This was like September 2014, something like that. 1 out of 3 books bought in the entire world were 50 Shades of Grey. So that's the benefit of building up a following at fanfiction.net. And you could say to yourself, well, I want to start making money right away. You're not going to make money anyway unless you have fans. So you gotta test the idea, and you gotta build your skills. Get your fans on Wattpad or fanfiction.net, or there's probably other sites out there too where you can publish romance. And then you know what? Harlequin, go to harlequin.com. They have a very specific formula for romance. Maybe you could expand some of your short stories into novellas. Harlequin romances are only about 30,000 words. That's half the size of a normal book. So go to harlequin.com and see if your romances, maybe you could paste them together and interweave some stories. And if it fits the formula at Harlequin, you can publish through Harlequin, make some money. So that answers that question. But meanwhile, I know I'm going to. Yesterday I said we wanted to talk more about newsletters. I guess this last answer was a little about newsletters, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them either tomorrow or the next day. Newsletters, the good, the bad, and the ugly. How to make a good newsletter with best practices. How to make the most amount of money with either a newsletter or an online course. I'm going to talk about what it means to have a free newsletter, a front-end newsletter, a back-end newsletter, a community, how to build a strong community, what does it mean to upsell, to downsell, when should it be an online course, when should it be a newsletter, how you should price a newsletter, how you should advertise it. I'm going to do a full thing about newsletters. Or you can ask me questions or ask either of us questions. Text 203-590-8607. We'd really love to get your feedback as well. I hope this was helpful to you, whether we were talking about the virus or the economy or politics or answering some of these questions. Give us some feedback. Love to hear it. See you next time. What do we have planned in the next day?
What day is it today?
Wednesday.
I don't know. A few things tomorrow, people to see.
We're having dinner with someone who advertises on our podcast. It's very exciting. I'd love to have dinner with people who give me money. Thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to save this on my Instagram feed, and we'll also package it into a podcast. Thanks very much.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.